Welcome to the Wilson Center's Middle East Program series on art activism. Today I'm pleased to be speaking with Khaled Barakeh, a conceptual artist whose work focuses on political and social injustices. In 2008, he moved to Denmark from Syria to study for his Master of Fine Arts and later founded Studio Khaled Barakeh in Berlin. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for the introduction and for inviting me as well.
So I'd like to start by learning more about your journey to becoming an artist. What led you to study art at university?
Basically, I learned calligraphy before I studied painting or practicing actually. So when I was 14, I learned different kind of Arabic calligraphy and fall in love with it. So I had this very specific relation to lines. And then after I went to the army because mandatory when I was 18. And there they discover my talent that I can draw and paint. Actually, I didn't paint before. I was mainly making drawings. And they assigned me the task of painting the president picture and writing a lot of propaganda slogans around the military base, which kind of strengthened my skills. And before actually I finished the army, I applied for the art school. And then I thought I will not have a chance to be accepted because back then we only had one art school. And 12,000 people or students apply and they accept only 200. And sometimes you need to have like a vitamin Bay or Black Bay money enter the table kind of. And I thought like I will have no shots. And then I thought like maybe I will try because if I try to apply for the art school, I will get 1 day off from the army to go to the entrance exam. And voila, it worked. And then I kind of, after I finished the army, then I kind of started studying mainly painting and drawings for 5 years. And then, I moved to Denmark and then to Germany after.
How interesting that you really kind of solidified your love for art when you were in the army. That I'm sure was quite a dichotomy.
Yeah.
So I know now you work on conceptual art. So can you explain a little bit more about what conceptual art is and also how it allows you to depict themes related to political and social issues, which I know you really focus on now in your work?
Yeah. So basically, in the old days, the practice of artists was very much based on medium. So if you're a sculptor or painter, or of course can be several things at the same time or have different skills. But nowadays, I think the kind of most relevant art movement is conceptual art, which you kind of you are not tied to one medium. You can the idea itself, the concept itself, it's kind of the starting point, and then kind of how it manifests itself with materials or with forms, the colors, the shapes. It's kind of secondary question that should serve the concept itself, and it's more and more diverse. I felt because I trained as a painter, right? I graduated as a painter until I came to Europe, to Denmark. This is where I learned about conceptual art. And I felt there's more freedom in doing conceptual art because it just allows you to use literally everything and kind of, mix it in with thoughts, with research, with manifestation of different artwork that kind of not necessarily only like you're doing a painting, right? Or you have an idea of painting and you do only one, but you can kind of intersect many ideas and many forms at the same time. Sorry, what was the second part of the question?
Yeah, no, that's very interesting.
Okay.
It sounds like a very powerful form of artwork that you're able to really draw on not only different ideas and concepts, but even just the actual materials that you're using to produce kind of a very poignant work of art. So the second part of the question was how you think conceptual art is really able to or allows you to touch on the political and social themes that you cover in your work.
Yeah, I think it's like kind of continuing what I was saying, that it's because it's not only connected to one medium. So for example, in painting, you have kind of to stay in the frame, right, of the painting, but with conceptual art, you have more freedom, which means that more possibilities as well, right? So you can use anything that you want, that you feel it serve your idea. So it's I think it's more liberating for artists to go that direction, specifically when you touch political or social matters. So while of course painting or sculpture or any other medium is still as great as it was since forever, I feel sometimes it has a limitation.
And what do you think is driving this change towards more conceptual art and incorporating different mediums and ideas into your work?
Yeah, I think it's a natural development of the society, which also reflects on the art practice and artist as well, right? Like the medium we use today and the tools we use is very much different from 10 years ago or 20 years ago, where mobile phones, for example, with apps that create everything. You can 3D scan and 3D print using just your mobile phone, while before, for example, you need to have very special equipment if you want to do so. So I think the whole kind of development that naturally reflected on the artist's practice, and artists, they become more free. I think this is maybe one of the reasons. Of course, like one can dig deep in and think of the educational system as well, that is mainly in the West, that kind of emphasizes in the development of many art movements that reach kind of the conceptual art as kind of main dominating movement in the art world today. So I think maybe this is one, yeah, this is like that might be the part of it.
Sure. And would you say, given that kind of the role that technology and education has in conceptual art, would you say it's more of a strong movement in Europe and the West compared to, say, the Middle East region and the art industry there? Or is it also taking off kind of globally?
I think it's taking off globally, but it's more advanced here, right? Like in general, in the Middle East, which I know it's not a statement and I will not, manifest it as such. But I think in general, the art world in the Middle East kind of following a little bit what's happening in the West, because they were a little bit more advanced, at least in defining what contemporary art is, as it was born in mainly Europe and the States. I think so. It's kind of, yeah, definitely leading, I think, the scene, but of course artists also all over the world using different kind of technology as well, which sometimes, by the way, using traditional material is a technology as well. Maybe not in the sense of how we define technology here, right? But it is a technology, even in a minor detail, if you are working on a craft ship of something. So it is a technological, I think, still approach.
It sounds like that's kind of the beauty of conceptual art, is it really broadens the definition of what art is, what materials are, and what technology, is all kind of relevant to your work. So turning now to your work in specific, I know activism plays a huge role in your work and in your art studio as well. So can you cover kind of what themes and issues you kind of draw from in your work?
Yeah, sure. I think, so I start calling my practice of necessity, I think a few years ago, because I was doing different things. I was sometimes, of course, my work all the time has social, political content and context, and because it's when you grow up in an area like as such the Middle East, it's not a choice to be political or not. I think it's just by nature everything is political. I mean, it's also in general everything is political, but also the politics there is very, very intense and very present. So I think what drove my practice all the time was social injustice. Like this is where I just see it and I feel it in my body and it resonates with me, and I feel like I need to do something about it, kind of taking the agency as an artist over things that I think were it's not enough what the government is doing or the society is doing or a group is doing. So I feel like I need to contribute to this, because that's just feel the yeah, there's a need, basically there's a necessity, right? So, and then kind of my practice shifted in different directions. I start wearing different hats. I start using curation sometimes as a tool of activism or as a tool of engaging artists or exposing artists, or specifically talking about different issues. Sometimes, of course, I use it directly in my works. I founded cultural organization as well in 2017 called CoCulture, which is basically to support artists in exile. And the organization itself, founding the organization, it's also a form of artistic practice, even though it's a legal entity by its own. So I think it was just manifesting itself through my artwork and using different technique. And that's what, again, like we were talking about conceptual art, I think that's where it touches, I think, the different direction that my practice went to.
So I want to discuss more about your initiative that you founded, but before we turn that direction, I'm curious what the response has been to your work by European audiences, and if that has changed over time.
It's an interesting thing to be a brown Middle Eastern artist in Europe, right? It has its kind of its own implications, I think. Because I feel sometimes, not only for artists, but for so many people, you have to be kind of a super person in your country if you are not from the West. And when you come here to be like everyone else, if you know what I mean. So it took me a while until kind of proving that I can speak the same artistic language and the same high level kind of. And at the beginning, I think it was well received from an early stage, but the kind of the attention that was gone towards Syria back then, it also kind of went and touched my practice as well, which sometimes it was interesting because sometimes I didn't like it so much because I wanted people to see my work through my work, not through my cause. You know what I mean? And this is, I think, was even moments when I decided not to be identified as Syrian artist, but as an artist or refugee artist, which is a title that I think followed me also for a while. And it's specifically because I think I'm speaking any artistic language like anyone else. So I want to be seen as such. And after a while, I think it was well received because people can understand the same language because art is universal language.
Right. So you kind of went through an evolution of having to kind of create your own identity in this, new environment that is separate from all of the narratives that people in the West are hearing about, Syria and about the Middle East. And it sounds like art was really a vehicle that allowed you to do that compared to maybe other.
That's even better than my answer, yes.
Well, no, art is really powerful in that way. And another question I had that you kind of have already touched in your answers is I know that part of your mission is to really inform people about the challenges that communities in conflict zones face. And so I'm curious how you think art differs from more traditional forms of media to convey those messages, like journalism or social media, or even political statements, if you will. How does art differ in informing audiences about what people experience?
Yeah, I think it's it's a huge difference between all what you listed, because, for example, if you talk about journalism about stating facts, right? And while art is not necessary, like you can also make fictional work that still tell the truth, and you are not kind of obliged to present the facts and statistics, right? So, and also I think what is unique about it, I mean, we all artists are storytellers in a different forms, whatever material we use. And what is, I think, is very beautiful about art, that it leaves a space for the receiver to interact with the work. So it has this kind of emotional distance that allows people to enter through the art before even entering through the topic, or you know what I mean? So it's a complete different practice, I think, than posting something on social media, or like writing a piece of text in a newspaper, or using photography. And there's also the kind of the process of the inner world of the artist, because artists in general are more sensitive, I think, and more open to observe what's around them and kind of reproduce it as well through them, through inner words. So it has kind of this process that you don't have in other forms, with, as I mentioned, kind of the kind of the narrow line between fiction and reality, right? And which I think makes it unique and make it accessible to everyone.
Yeah, I think that accessibility component that you just mentioned there at the end is a very important one to highlight. As I'd mentioned, I'd really like to learn more about the initiative that you founded. So you said it's a legal entity that supports artists in exile. Can you speak more about what kind of led you to founding that and how your organization has grown over time?
Sure. So the organization called CoCulture. It's a non-profit organization rooted between art, activism, and community building. The main purpose was in 2015, with so-called refugee crisis, with many Syrians and others as well arriving to Europe. I prefer to call it European crisis, because refugee crisis was and still happening. Just, I think, last month we had, or the world had 1 million refugees. 100 million refugees, which is a new record. I mean, of course, we don't need even to have the 100 million, like even, like even less or half is a catastrophe by its own. But anyway, that's another topic. So when many people arrived to here, or many Syrians also among the refugees, and which also there were artists among them, institutions here, they asked me to nominate people, because of they still knew the scene, or the presence of Syrian artists still fresh in Europe. So, and since I was in Europe since a while, I kind of established my network and my studio. And then I thought it's not the right way to reach out or to democratize these opportunities that comes to me. I want to channel it to everyone, but I only channel it to people I know of, or I know of their work. And that kind of led me to think of developing a very basic Google poll, and just very, very basic: your name, your address, your email. You want us to get in touch with you if you get an opportunity. And then later on, I thought, why not? And then I send it to one person, and they send it to other person, and you have the snowball effect. And then I thought, why not to develop this to be a mobile app? And then the mobile app idea developed as well to be an online platform that aims to map and reconnect and empower artists, Syrian artists all over the world, kind of recreating the community online, and providing them opportunities and connecting them to the art world. And then out of this project, also there was another project evolved, like Syria, that's called, this project called Syria Cultural Index. There's another project which is the Syrian Biennale, and the Syrian Biennale, it's a mobile biennial that will follow the refugee routes, taking place each edition in a different country. And then we rented a space here in Berlin because we needed space to function, and then the space was used as a community space. We're very open to the people and to the community, kind of to share, to shape it. And then and that became a project by its own. And there was another project which called Support the Supporters, which is basically supporting artists at risk by trying to get fund for them from third parties and help them to be relocated in Europe, in Germany, and elsewhere.
What a very important initiative that you're leading. I think you really hit a couple of very important points, that one of the biggest barriers that refugees face is access to information and access to the opportunities. They come with so many skills that they, and expertise, as you said, people who are demonstrated and professional artists, but they don't necessarily have the ability to continue their profession after they immigrate. And so it's a very important network and kind of platform that you've established for them. And it sounds like it's only grown, and it's really developed into multiple branches and initiatives, which is very important. So that leads me to kind of one of my last questions. I'm curious what other members of the diaspora and international community can do to better support artists, not only in the Middle East region, but also refugee artists or just artists in general from the community.
I think the question is like a little bit general, that hard to answer it with a specific direction, but I think because it can be really many things, and depends on which country are we talking about and which group of artists, because it has the specificity for each group and each where they are located today. But I think the most important thing that I can think of as an answer is giving the agency to the artist over their topic, over their practice, not necessarily try to enforce any specific direction, because we have to understand the geographical rhythm that is different sometimes, in the practice itself, how and the topic and the material and the form that is not necessarily the most dominant art practice here. It should be applied to everyone, because people sometimes come from different background and they have different understanding to art. So supporting artists, giving them the agency over their narratives, I think is what I can maybe answer your question with.
Well, and that kind of circles back to one of your very first points about conceptual art and how we're in a different time with different technologies and materials. I'm sure part of that is just the sheer movement of people bringing new ideas and really injecting the art scene with their new skills and their perspectives. So you're exactly right. The art industry wouldn't move if we didn't give agency to these artists to pursue their passion. So just before we sign off, I'm curious what you are working on now at your studio or otherwise.
At the organization, we are about to launch the Syria Cultural Index, the online platform that aims to map artists around the world. At the same time, we start fundraising for the Syrian Biennale as well, to also start the first launch of the first edition. And in my studio, I'm working in several projects. I did a demonstration, an artwork, public art installation, a form of demonstration that was presented in different countries in front of different parliaments, and it will continue kind of demonstrating. We're gonna go to Kiev soon. We're gonna present the work there, and I'm working in something called related to the German Constitution as well. And it's kind of practicing citizenship for us, because now after 6 or 7 years being in Germany, not only Syrians but also others start becoming Germans, so they are the new Europeans. So I'm also doing a work that kind of touch this point. I'm working on a project about cultural looting in general that also should be done by next year. So there's several things on the plate at the moment.
A lot you're working on. Well, very interesting work, and again, very important initiatives that you're leading both at your studio and through CoCulture. So thank you again so much for your time. It was a real pleasure to speak with you today.
Thank you. Likewise.